Streets of Rage is one of several high-profile series that Sega just decided to do nothing with for years, decades, just sitting on these properties, doing nothing with them except maybe a reference or character cameo here or there in some Sonic the Hedgehog spin-off sports game. So I've been waiting for a new Streets of Rage game for let's say roughly ballpark 10,000 years. So I've been very excited to see Streets of Rage 4, and I am very excited to say that I love it. It's been a bit controversial because of the art style and some other decisions made with the game, but I am stunned by how old school this thing is. And when I say old school, I mean there are unlockable characters that are the pixel versions of the characters from the old games, you know, Streets of Rage 1 and 2, and they are exactly the same characters. They play the same. It's not just the pixel effect on those. It's not just a cosmetic thing. If you're playing as Axel from Streets of Rage 1, you're playing as Axel from Streets of Rage 1, and I bring that up now just to demonstrate how old-fashioned this game is, let's say. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but it is so old-fashioned that you can plug in a character from Streets of Rage 1 and it will play just fine with this game. It will fit into this combat system, no worries whatsoever. That is not to say the new characters are not fun to play and don't have their own unique abilities, but this is as close to a beat-em-up from the 90s as you're gonna get from a game made in 2020 current year argument. So you play as one of 4 characters, the roster expanding as you collect points over time. You've got Axel, who is now basically rocking a very muscular dad bod, because this is set 10 years after the last time we saw all these characters. So you've got Axel, you've got Blaze Fielding, you've got Cherry, and you've got Floyd. And true to the genre's roots, they are very simple to control. They all pretty much have access to the same abilities per se. You can do your little punch kick combos, you can hold down the attack button for a stronger attack, you can perform special moves which drain your health, but if you hit enemies quick enough you will regain that health. There's also a special super duper mega super special super duper attack which you can spend a star to unleash. You start the stage with 1 star, there are stars hidden throughout the level, and you spend one of those, and then you can do some big ol' invincible attack that is very good for bosses and the like. I mean, it's Streets of Rage. I could just fucking leave it there talking about the mechanics. It's Streets of literal rage. And with that in mind, this game has a fairly interesting approach to defensive maneuvers when viewed through a modern lens, because this is so retro that aside from Adam, who's got a sidestep move, there's not a lot of ducking and weaving or even blocking going on here. There is no block button, and you are not deftly dodging out of the way of moves. Very much like in the old Sega Genesis games, you can avoid attacks by moving up and down by not occupying the same plane of movement as your enemies. And in almost every situation, a good defense is literally a good offense, because there are 2 moves you can do that do grant invincibility. You can grab an enemy and throw them, or you can perform a neutral special move. Just hit the special move button without any directional input. So between some tactical maneuvering and your invincible moves and a few well-placed back attacks, you should be okay. Well, you've got everything you need to be okay. Actually being okay is a different matter, because Streets of Rage 4 is quite merciless when it wants to be. Streets of Rage 4 is a tough game. I mean, it's old school tough by its very nature, I suppose. It can be annoying. If you've played the original Streets of Rage, then you know exactly how annoying these games can get sometimes, with enemies taking in their little cheap shots or pulling off their own throws and other bullshit. Like, they brought back the stabby guys, the Galcia, the red-haired enemies with the pokey knives that just run at you and stab you up. Oh, they got them coming out the arse, mate. Most enemies are fairly easily dealt with on their own, but of course you're surrounded on all sides, so it can be quite tough to time your attacks carefully between the ones that will give you a defensive edge and ones that deal with the enemies right in front of you. But nonetheless, if you loved old-school beat-em-ups and you don't think they need to improve much, then Streets of Rage 4 is more or less perfect for you. And I'm one of them people that do believe that we haven't had a real old-fashioned brawler in so long. and it's still so satisfying to just walk from left to right, punching and kicking things. I think this works out really well. I'm often one to be quite harshly critical of dated mechanics when I feel they do need improvement. And I'm not so sure that for what this game's trying to accomplish, that anything does need to be changed. Modern game design sensibility suggests there should be a lot of blocking and ducking and weaving, there should be RPG mechanics, there should be all sorts of modern conveniences taped onto the game. And considering I still go back to play the original Streets of Rage games fairly regularly, in fact just last week I was playing the first one through again, a Streets of Rage that picks up where 3 left off is actually, well, it just suits me down to the ground. So let's talk about the art style. Some people don't like it, same with the Battletoads, the new Battletoads that's coming out in the near future. People don't like these overly animated cartoony styles. I love it in Streets of Rage 4. I think this game looks sublime. I love how animated and vibrant enemies and heroes look. I love the comic booky looking streets and the overall aesthetic design and the soundtrack. I mean, the soundtrack is gorgeous, I feel. I love the thick lines and the wild colours. Some of the enemy types actually look like they belong in Archer. If Archer were a brawler, I feel it would look a bit like this. The whole aesthetic works really well for me. And I guess some people want it darker and grittier, but I really like the comic book heavy style. There are some really neat boss designs, a lot of resurrected characters from the previous games. We see a lot of returning faces, and each one I feel has been done justice by the art style. It absolutely nails that feel of a cartoon that's brought to life, especially with just how lavish the animation work is. I do feel some of the presentation could be a little better. There are lengthy cutscenes between stages at times, and they go on for too long and they're silent. It's just text with some muted music and sort of static paintings, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And the online could use some work. It's not drop in, drop out, which I feel would have worked just fine for this game. If one player quits, then the whole game's busted, even if it's the second player. And at least on the PS4 version, the lobbies are threadbare. You refresh it, there's 1 or 2 people looking for matches. I don't know if that's a function of matchmaking being bad or not a lot of people playing the game. I hope it's the former, because that could be fixed a lot easier. And it's a shame, because online I think this could really thrive. The game is best played with 2 players, I feel, which you can do locally, of course. But it's been frustrating for me trying to get into some online games, because I found Streets of Rage 4 very replayable. I'm happy to go back into stages I've beaten 3 or 4 times. In fact, that's pretty much what I've been doing for the past couple days, is just replaying Streets of Rage 4, which is helped by the lifetime score. You accrue points that stack up between matches and rounds and gameplay sessions, and as you hit certain thresholds, certain milestones in your lifetime score, that's when you unlock new characters. There are multiple modes. There's an arcade mode, there's a boss rush mode, there are of course multiple difficulty settings that go from easy to normal to hard to hardest to mania, and I feel there's some replay value in trying all of the characters as well, because despite the uniform and rather simple control scheme, they do look and feel very different to play. Floyd is a big beefy boy. He can grab more than one enemy at once and bash their heads together. He can also move and jump while grabbing opponents. His special allows him to close distances quickly by extending his arms or just creating a shockwave around him. Cherry hits hard with her guitar and can do neat things like grab onto an enemy with her legs and then just pummel them in the face. Blaze does jumping and kicking real good and has been my main since the very first one, so she's the best. And Axel Stone is... so that's nice. And like I said, Adam, who shows up a little bit later, he's got a steppy move, and so he's got a lot more maneuverability. Streets Rage 4 is a really good game, I think. I mean, I've had a ridiculous amount of fun with it, and it's one of those games where I've damaged my thumb a bit because I was smashing all the buttons with my trotters too much. And I've always felt that's the sign of a good game, a game that encourages me to inflict incremental physical damage on myself. The game moves slowly and lacks a lot of modern accoutrements, but I absolutely love it. Grand upper, my friends. Grand upper, everyone.